Welcome to The Explainer. I am so excited to guide you through this today. We're talking about Attack on Titan, but look, we're going way past the surface level action here. We are descending right into the abyss of its structural lore, its hidden dystopia, and honestly, the profound tragedy at the very core of it all. You know, the whole story kicks off with this brilliant deception, right? The promise of a classic adventure. It hands you an enemy you can actually see, a solid reason to fight, and a clear, straight path forward.
Okay, let's dive into this because this quote perfectly captures that initial hook. I mean, think about the sheer kinetic joy of the ODM gear. The music swells, those cables fire, and suddenly the soldiers are just swinging free of the ground. The story deliberately makes us feel like resisting these giant monsters isn't just possible, it's glorious. It intentionally builds our trust in this fight for freedom, making us really care about the Survey Corps and every sacrifice they make. It's this beautiful, thrilling setup that is perfectly designed to contrast with the incredibly grim structural reality we're about to uncover.
Which leads us to a really vital question. What is the true horror of Attack on Titan? If you've been paying attention to the lore, you know it absolutely isn't just some giant, mindless humanoid smashing down a wall. No, the real monster in this narrative, it isn't something you can just slice at the nape of the neck. It is something deeply structural. We're talking about an inescapable loop woven into the literal fabric of the character's world.
Section 1. The Illusion of Freedom. Or, as I like to call it, peeling the onion.
And this brilliantly illustrates how every single time the characters, and let's be real, us as the audience, think we've finally broken through a wall or discovered the ultimate truth, the story cruelly strips away those certainties, layer by layer. It just reveals another cage right outside the last one. Think back to the early manga cover art. It hooks us with that classic, super comforting trope. A hero, blades drawn, fighting a massive, terrifying external threat. We get completely hooked by this binary idea of humanity versus monster. It's an alluring promise, right? Like, hey, if we just kill the big monster, we win our freedom. But, as you'll see, the story actually uses this traditional trope as a massive trap.
Section 2. The Source of Life and the Origins of the Titans. The lore itself functions like this fascinating mystery box, and there are two competing theories out there. On one side, you've got the biological theory. Game Rant highlights how this anomaly closely resembles a hallucigenia, which is an actual real-world insect-like organism from the Cambrian period. In this view, it acts as a symbiotic parasite that literally bonded with Yr's spine, permanently altering her physical form. But then, on the other side, Screen Rant points out a deeply supernatural, almost psychological theory. This suggests the Titans are a manifestation of Ymir's own will, specifically her paralyzing fear of death and her desperate desire to escape the finality of her enslavement. The creature simply reacted to her subconscious, gifting her the ultimate, tragic survival mechanism. Either way you look at it, both perspectives show us a power that completely, terrifyingly adapts to its hosts.
Section 3. Walls of Dystopian Control.
Now, what's really interesting about this is a brilliant visual metaphor analyzed in a master's dissertation from the University of Biskra. In a multimodal format like manga, the blank spaces between panels are called gutters. Well, the physical gutters on the page run completely parallel to the restrictive, ideological walls containing the citizens of paradise. Think about it. The characters are literally boxed in by the borders of the page, exactly the same way they are boxed in by the massive stone walls of their reality. Their entire horizon is manufactured.
And those physical walls, they are far more than just stone. They act as a literal theology of control. Take Wall Maria, the outermost wall that falls first. It's named after the Virgin Mary, symbolizing a sacred maternal boundary. When it falls, the mother is lost. Then you have Wall Rose, which stands for secrecy, from sub rosa, meaning under the rose or spoken in secret. Fittingly, it's the wall where the traitors hide right in plain sight. Finally, Wall Sina represents divine law, echoing Mount Sinai, which is right where the ruling class sits and administers their version of reality. These names aren't just cool world building, they form a managed fragments of reality specifically designed to keep the populace ignorant and trapped.
Section 4. Deconstructing the Hero.
As those physical walls fall, the moral walls come crashing down too. If we apply Jacques Derrida's theory of deconstruction here, we can actually map out the binary oppositions that typical Western storytelling relies on and see exactly how this narrative shatters them. We thought the wings of freedom meant liberation, right? Well, the reality is systemic captivity. The Survey Corps are just cogs in an endless cycle. We thought finding the knowledge in the basement would save humanity. Nope. Instead, it revealed that their entire existence was just a managed political trap. And then there's the starkest binary of all, hero versus villain. This story systematically bulldozes that wall, showing us the characters like Reiner and Ymir aren't simple villains or heroes.
They are tragic, functioning products of a deeply inherited system of war.
The absolute tragedy of this synchronized ignorance hits its peak with Reiner's rooftop confession. He doesn't confess with this huge, dramatic weight of a traditional villain. He says it casually, with this terrifying, flat calm. He is so fractured by the requirements of the system that the seam between his true self and his soldier persona has just completely dissolved. It's the ultimate proof that this society doesn't just cage bodies, it literally weaponizes identity itself.
Section 5. The architecture of trauma. Let's move to how this builds and guide ourselves deeper into the abyss, transitioning from societal walls to the biological inheritance of pain. 2,000 years ago, a single enslaved girl, Ymir, falls into a tree, and her trauma literally shapes the world. A century ago, a king builds physical walls out of millions of colossal bodies. And then, in the present day, Eren activates the paths. This isn't just a random sequence of historical events, it is a closed loop. It's mapping the trauma of a single wound across hundreds and hundreds of generations.
Because we really have to understand what the paths actually are. It's not just some magical anime realm. It is the terrifying, literal manifestation of intergenerational trauma. In this world, history and hatred are not just stories passed down at the dinner table. They are biological infrastructure. They are physically passed down through spinal fluid, running right through the nervous systems of the characters before they're even old enough to form their own identity.
And when that trauma is finally unleashed, the Wall Titans do not run. They walk. Just think about the sheer gravity of that for a second. Millions of colossal titans, essentially pure violence that was put in storage for a century, finally unleashed. But they don't stampede in some wild chaos. They walk with a terrifying, patient momentum.
There is absolutely no classical monster hunger here. You can't outwit them. You definitely can't negotiate with them. This is an unthinking, completely automated system executing a 2,000-year-old wound. It's an instruction issued from the distant past, moving forward with absolute blank inevitability.
As Eren initiates the rumbling, it's really easy to look at the sheer devastation and think that society broke down, or that someone made a horrific mistake, or that the system failed. Actually, scratch that. It didn't fail at all.
So, the crucial point here is exactly this. The system succeeded. The rumbling is not a glitch in the ideology, not even close. It is exactly what happens when an unchecked, automated cycle of inherited violence and nationalism is allowed to reach its absolute logical conclusion. Eren's horrific choice was simply the culmination of the very architecture he was born into.
Section 6. The cycle continues.
And this brings us to the thematic climax of our explainer, the final, bitter truth stripped of all its illusions. Throughout the entire story, the core drive was always moving forward, keep pushing, keep fighting, keep sacrificing for freedom, right? But that motion was actually the Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of the snake eating its own tail. The characters tragically mistook motion for progress. The Survey Corps, Eren, the nations of the entire world, they were all just consuming themselves in an endless closed loop of human conflict. The motion was completely necessary for the system to survive, sure, but it never actually led to true escape.
Which leaves us with this final, haunting image to ponder. Long after the walls have fallen and the Titans are gone, a new child in a whole new era walks toward a massive tree that looks all too familiar. So, what does this all mean? Are we just watching the Ouroboros begin again? Can humanity ever truly escape its own nature, its own inherited momentum, or are we just destined to continuously build new walls? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating narrative with me. I really hope this leaves you looking at the walls in your own world just a little bit differently.